On May 15th, ID Software unleashed the next bold chapter in the legendary Doom franchise. Doom, the Dark Ages. This isn't your typical Doom. It's a wild, heavy metal ride set in medieval times, with the Slayer swapping out chainsaws for shields, maces, and even facing off against dragons. A total reinvention of the classic demon-slaying formula. It promised to bring something fresh, brutal, and intense to the table. But here's the catch. Despite all the hype and innovation, how can a game with millions of players also be considered a flop? Today, we're diving deep into the numbers, the gameplay, and what this means for ID Software and the future of Doom. Doom has always been about fast-paced, high-octane demon slaughter, but with the Dark Ages, ID Software threw a curveball. The setting is medieval, the weapons range from swords to chainsaw shields, and the aesthetic leans hard into a heavy metal vibe. It's a bold move, even more daring than previous entries. When I first played it, I had my doubts. Melee combat in Doom? Medieval themes? It seemed like a big departure. But once you jump in, the gameplay is unmistakably Doom, frantic, brutal, and rewarding. The frenetic pace and fluid combat remain intact, with even more weapon variety and crazier fights. Despite the gameplay delivering on the promise, the commercial response tells a different story. Official data from ID Software reveals over 3 million players have experienced the game. That sounds impressive on paper. But here's the kicker. Only about 1 million actually bought it. Where are the rest? The majority are playing through Xbox Game Pass, the subscription service that allows players to download and play games for a monthly fee. This inflates player counts, but doesn't translate directly into sales revenue for the developers. Breaking it down, 200,000 copies sold on PlayStation, 400,000 copies sold on Steam, 200,000 copies sold on Xbox retail or digital storefronts. The remaining 2.2 million players accessed the game through Game Pass. What does this mean for profitability? This split between paid sales and Game Pass players raises critical questions about profitability. Big-budget titles like Doom, the Dark Ages have massive development and marketing costs. They need solid sales numbers to recoup that investment. Game Pass is a double-edged sword. It provides incredible exposure, especially for indie games or smaller projects. But for a AAA game with a hefty budget, relying mostly on subscription playthroughs might not generate enough revenue to be sustainable. Microsoft doesn't publicly share detailed revenue data from Game Pass, making it hard to evaluate exactly how much money flows back to studios. But clearly, 1 million copies sold worldwide is a modest figure for a franchise of Doom's stature. Before we continue, if you want to try the latest games without breaking the bank, Gamefly lets you rent physical copies and have them delivered right to your door. Click the link in the description to learn more and start your free trial. Now let's get back to it. Looking at Steam, the game's PC storefront paints an even grimmer picture. Using SteamDB data, the Dark Ages peaked at only about 31,000 concurrent players at launch, a record low for modern Doom games. For context, Doom Eternal peaked at 105,000 players on Steam at launch. Doom 2016 reached 44,000 concurrent players. This suggests that even though Game Pass boosts overall player counts, Steam buyers aren't showing up in expected numbers. And that's despite many PC players already owning the subscription and still choosing to buy on Steam to support developers and keep games in their libraries. Why didn't the Dark Ages sell? Several factors could be behind the disappointing sales. A price, at around $60 or more, some find it pricey, especially compared to free Game Pass access. Theme and gameplay. The medieval setting and some gameplay changes, like melee combat and executions, felt alien to traditional Doom fans. Hardware requirements. The game requires ray tracing-capable GPUs, locking out players with older hardware, which shrinks the potential player base. A DRM and anti-piracy. Heavy anti-piracy measures can sometimes alienate legitimate customers. Doom, the Dark Ages is undeniably a bold experiment from ID Software. It dares to break from the familiar and transports the legendary Slayer into a medieval setting filled with brutal melee combat, chainsaw shields, and a heavy metal vibe that's uniquely its own. The gameplay itself, once you dive in, remains fast, fluid, and satisfyingly violent, true to the core Doom experience that fans have come to love. The combat feels fresh yet familiar, and the new weapons and enemies add variety without losing the franchise's signature intensity. But here's the hard truth. Despite all this innovation and quality, the game has underperformed commercially in a way that can't be ignored. The numbers speak volumes. 1 million copies sold worldwide is far below what a AAA franchise of this caliber and budget needs to break even, let alone turn a profit. Even with the backing of Xbox Game Pass and the massive player base it brings, the game's financial success is questionable at best. The reliance on subscription models to inflate player counts is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it introduces the game to millions who might never have bought it otherwise, expanding the community and increasing visibility. On the other hand, it obscures the real financial picture, making it difficult for studios to recoup the often enormous development and marketing costs. For a giant like Doom, which carries decades of legacy and high expectations, this model feels risky. The studio needs more than just players, it needs paying customers. Moreover, there are legitimate reasons why some fans may have hesitated to purchase. The medieval theme, while creative, might have alienated those who wanted a more traditional Doom experience. The mandatory ray tracing requirement cut off access for players without compatible hardware, potentially turning away a significant chunk of the audience. Pricing also played a role, at 300 to 350 reais, or an equivalent premium price in other regions. It's a steep investment, especially when players can access the game for free on Game Pass. Despite these challenges, Doom, The Dark Ages is far from a failure in terms of quality or player enjoyment. It's a solid game with exhilarating combat and a fresh twist on the Doom formula. The passion and skill of the developers shine through in the design and gameplay mechanics. But commercial success in today's market is about more than just quality. It's about timing, pricing strategy, platform choices, and marketing alignment, areas where this launch struggled. For the future of the franchise and ID Software, this outcome is a cautionary tale. Subscription platforms are reshaping how we define success in the industry, but they don't replace the need for strong sales numbers that directly support a studio's sustainability. Doom, The Dark Ages shows that even with millions of players, the underlying business model needs to work, or studios risk jeopardizing the development of future projects. In the end, Doom, The Dark Ages is a game that deserved more. More players willing to take a chance on its unique vision, more recognition beyond subscription statistics, and more financial success to validate the risk ID Software took with this medieval shift. It's a great game that found itself in a tough market, and its story is a reminder that even legends aren't immune to the complexities of today's gaming landscape. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Is Doom, The Dark Ages a victim of changing industry models, or did it simply fail to connect with fans? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to experience Doom's medieval mayhem without spending a fortune, don't forget to check out Gamefly. The link's in the description. Make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into gaming, anime, movies, and all things nerdy. See you next time on What's Up Nerd Insider.